You're very welcome along to the Matchbook Football Podcast special edition here, covering a lot of finals that are going to happen over the next week or so. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey. Delighted to welcome Mark O'Hare, Adrian, Clarke, and Miguel Delaney to the podcast one final time this club season. So quite excited to get stuck into these finals. We're covering the Europa League, FA Cup, Championship playoff, and the Champions League final as well. Just before we get going, do check out the Matchbook betting exchange for all these markets on all these finals. You'll be invariably getting best price on the odds checker grid. Hit that like button and subscribe completely for free to our YouTube channel, or if you're listening on the podcast, hit that 5-star button if you're enjoying the content, and give us a follow wherever you're listening. But other than that, let's just get straight into it, and we will start with the Europa League final in the Aviva Stadium in Dublin, because we couldn't host Euro 2020. Atalanta 4.6 in the 90-minute market. Leverkusen odds on at 191. The draw is available at 3.8. Both teams to score yes, heavily favoured at 186. The Asian handicap line sees Atalanta get a half a goal head start at above evens 2.08. The goal line 2.5, and that is essentially a coin flip. Miguel, start it for you and set the atmosphere, or start this for us, because you're actually in Dublin at the moment and you were at the Aviva Stadium yesterday. Give us a flavour of the atmosphere, because obviously it was weird how we got given the Europa League final, but it's great to have such two exciting European teams, I would say, in Dublin this week.
Yeah, I mean, it is probably overdue, given there's been no major event in Ireland since the 2011 final, which maybe people felt was a little bit disappointing, given it was two Portuguese teams. Obviously, we were meant to have one of the Euro 2020 games, but COVID stopped that. But, I mean, it is one of those cities that maybe should have more events. There's a bigger question, actually, over whether it has the infrastructure, really. I mean, given all the questions that would have come had Liverpool qualified, or even Rangers or West Ham, or possibly even Roma. But it's interesting that perspective. Atalanta and Leverkusen, their club is kind of almost big enough, and the stadium just big enough that they could both, they could bring essentially, I suppose, their two home crowds over almost. And it does create, I think, what is at its core actually quite a nice occasion. Okay, it's not kind of one of the dream finals that people in Ireland would have wanted in terms of Liverpool being involved, or a mega club like that. But it's a Europa League final that really means something. I think it's quite, again, unlike 2011, it's quite nice that it's two clubs from two different countries. It's two kind of major football countries. It's the champions of Germany and one of Italy's most exciting teams. And because of their recent histories, it means a lot more. Leverkusen, I mean, we all know the stories. They were Leverkusen until this season. And it does, I think, put an extra historical scope on this game, because if Alonso does this, and the big one is an unbeaten treble. But even if he adds the pure fact of a European trophy to the Bundesliga, ending Bayern's dominance after 11 years, I think, given the way the modern game has gone, that's an achievement potentially up there as an equivalent of Mourinho with Porto in 2004, or Ferguson with Aberdeen in the 80s. I know that people would think that's an exaggeration, but like in the context of the modern game, I think it's quite fair because of the improbability. And then on Atlanta's side, we've had this club that have been kind of steadily building Italian football for so long, going about things the right way, haven't won a trophy since the early 60s, and it feels like Gasperini deserves something from that perspective as well. So the atmosphere is building. There were already fans around the stadium yesterday when I went to collect my accreditation. And I'm looking forward to just what generally, I mean, quite rare in football these days, given some of the toxicity or rivalry and all that, but what should be a nice occasion in the very truest meaning of the term. And I think and a very open game, I think.
Okay, yeah. So we'll go to the bets first and then come back to you, Miguel, for the final closing thoughts on it. Mark, set the game up in terms of a betting perspective. I think Miguel's given a good account of the history of the two clubs. Two pretty exciting teams going into this game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think of all the finals we're going to discuss today, this, I think, has the potential to be the best, and the best by some distance, actually. And, Dublin should be in for a real treat. We've got two proactive front foot teams, likeable clubs, impressive coaches, and both clubs should really relish this occasion. They've got a really good chance of lifting a piece of silverware, which hasn't been commonplace for either club, really. And obviously the market has made Leverkusen odds on favourites, and that's totally understandable, because what they've achieved this season is extraordinary. Trying hard to try and find the right words to describe it, but I don't think I'll ever see this in my lifetime, to be honest. To be 51 games unbeaten across all competitions, the champions of Germany for the first time, the potential to do a treble. Let's not forget that in the Pokal final, they're playing as zwei Bundesliga side, Kaiserslautern, who almost got relegated as well. So they're going to be very, very odds-on favourites to win that trophy this weekend. So, an outrageous season. And if someone had said at the start of the campaign that a team in Germany would win the treble, having signed a player from North London, I mean, everyone's going to be looking towards Bayern Munich. But the fact it's Leverkusen, it's just astonishing, really.
Yeah.
There were signs there were going to be a force this season domestically after the appointment of Xabi Alonso last year. They improved dramatically, but nobody ever anticipated a tilt to the title, certainly not to this extent either. I genuinely think it's one of the most incredible achievements of my lifetime, alongside the likes of Leicester and the teams that Miguel's talked about in the past too. So, based on the last 9 months, you have to say they warrant their place as odds-on favourites here. But they are still a relatively short price for a major European final, and Atalanta are no slouches whatsoever. They might be missing De Roon in midfield, which is a big blow. Their vice-captain, their destroyer. But Ederson can come in. He's does a great job of kicking people all over the place, just like De Roon. He will get around the park as well. And Gasperini's side are always dangerous in forward areas, and irrespective of the personnel too. And they've got 2 players in forward areas who were written off and dismissed as useless, really, after big money moves last year. Charles De Ketelaere, who failed at Milan, and Schumacher as well, who failed at West Ham. I think the 2 of them between them didn't even score 5 or 6 goals last year, but they both had about 20 goal contributions this season, as has Tian Cooper-Myers in midfield, who was signed as a centre-half, but has been absolutely incredible, one of the best midfielders in Serie A this season. Lookman, of course, Premier League fans will know, is contributing too. So there's a lot to like about this Atalanta side. My main concern for them really coming into this is the schedule. They had a Coppa Italia final last midweek, lost narrowly to Juventus, who performed probably their best performance of the season, actually, in Atalanta. We're missing Scamacca for that match, and they failed to fire a little bit. But I do think they're a more expressive side, like Leverkusen, and I think we will see a better side to Atalanta rather than sort of playing against a safety-first, rigid Juventus team under Allegri. So I think we're going to be in for a really good game. Both sides operate with a 3-at-the-back system, utilising wing-backs and width, and both teams will look to play positively. So I'm quite happy that we're getting odds around 185 on both teams to score here. I did really want to back Atalanta with the start, actually, but this feels like the safer option, actually, because we just need Atalanta to score. It's difficult to see Leverkusen not scoring. They've failed to score once all season in 51 games. But just on that, Leverkusen sort of potentially trying to oppose them in some way or form. They have ridden their luck a little bit this season, it has to be said. The amount of games they've come back from the dead and scored late equalisers or winners is extraordinary in its own right, really. In fact, in the last 8 games, 4 of them they've scored in the 89th minute or later to pinch draws against Roma, West Ham, Dortmund and Stuttgart. And it's just 2 clean sheets in the last 8 games as well. So I do think Atalanta can grab a goal here. I'll be very, very surprised if this match fails to fire. And having wanted to sort of get them on side, I thought both teams to score was the best way, the safest way, I should say, of getting them on side. So, they failed to fire last week, but they really fancied their chances this week as kind of written off as underdogs. All the pressure is on Leverkusen, it has to be said. This is the big one between now and the end of the season for them. So, pressure can do strange things to teams, and so far Leverkusen has risen to it and performed way above it. But as I say, there's been a few signs in the last couple of months that perhaps they've ridden their luck a little bit. So, fighting chance for Atalanta here.
Okay, the price itself books the trend of both teams to score prices this season. 185 for Mark, both teams to score. Adrian, Granit Xhaka's last club defeat was at the City Ground against Nottingham Forest 2-0. Can you believe that?
No, I can't really. Yeah, it is amazing. It's a brilliant story, and they're such a nice team to watch as well, aren't they? There's some beautiful patterns with the way they pass the ball around, and yeah, look, I'm gonna side with them just about. Obviously, like all finals, you wouldn't expect there to be a great difference between the two sides. It could be a close run thing, but the momentum that they've got is extraordinary. It's really, really powerful, and it's just grown and grown and grown. They feel invincible, don't they? And I think that is worth something. I really do. Neither team has the pressure of Champions League football to worry about. I think they're both qualified now, so it's a genuine straight shootout for the silverware, which definitely bodes well for the game. I'm not sure it's going to escalate. I do think it will be a good game with two front foot teams, two teams that want to score goals, but they can also both defend, as well. And I think Atalanta face the fewest shots on target per game in the Europa League, just 2.8 shots they face per game. on target in the competition. So they know how to defend on the front foot. They defend from the front brilliantly. So I don't think they're likely to collapse here. But I do think that Leverkusen, if there's a team that can play through Atalanta, who do, press well and in midfield they're really, really strong at winning the ball, it might be Leverkusen because they're so composed, they're so confident, so fluent. Another reason maybe why I would oppose, mass goals is they're both got the similar systems, 3-4-3. So effectively it might go man to man or 3-4-2-1, various versions of a 3-4-3. Sometimes when things match up like that, you can see both teams cancel one another out. And another reason to maybe favour Leverkusen is that Atalanta, as Mark's hinted at, they've had to be in full pelt. They've been at it. They've had to pick their main players in recent weeks because every match has mattered. And it hasn't been the case for Leverkusen, obviously. And I've noticed their team selection has been, their 11 has rotated really nicely across the last 3, 4, 5 games. Xabi Alonso has trusted every member of his squad. They've all had game time. They've all had a little bit off as well. And I just think coming into the final, they'll be the fresher of the two teams, Leverkusen. So I'm going to side with them because they are invincible. And I think they are going to do it now. That's my feeling. And this is the big one. But look, what's the best way to get on side? Well, I'm going to go with under 4.5 goals and Leverkusen. There's not that many finals that escalate to 5 goals or more, are there? We've had a few in this competition as it happens down the years, but yeah, I don't expect a 3-2, 4-2, that kind of thing. I think it'll be under 4.5. I'm going to go with Leverkusen. And that comes out 2.18. So very, very backable if you do that combination.
Okay, yeah, boost the price from 191 if you include under 4.5 goals. Miguel, you're sort of combining the two lads' thoughts into a bet itself. That's the way you see it going. Entertaining Leverkusen win.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was probably closer to Mark's, and then I just kind of convinced myself there's just all this emotional momentum around Leverkusen. Even in games and they put up against it, has become pretty much a hallmark of their season, and they've got through it. I think when teams are in that sort of mindset, essentially until really, in a situation like this, really until they're beaten and it's disrupted, and we saw that, say, with Arsenal and the Invincibles going back to 2004, it has a power of its own. Of course, there's a possibility Atalanta do that, but I think in the game it is, in that sense, it'll be open anyway, which is why I think both teams to score is almost a no-brainer, really. And I just have a feeling for Leverkusen. Now, the price is fairly high, which I think is actually what swayed me, although maybe it adds that extra element of risk to it. But yeah, I think Leverkusen, they're going to do this. There's all this momentum behind them, and it's going to be an exceptionally open game. I mean, this of all the 4 games we've gone through today, I actually think this is the one with almost the most kind of enticing variety of potential choices, be that from both teams to score to number of goals, even obviously potential score lines. But weighing up everything, combining everything, I'm going to Leverkusen win. And I think, yeah, obviously both teams to score.
Okay, so that's available at 4.3 in the matchup betting exchange. That will be the best price on the odds checker price grid. I can guarantee you that. Those markets betting essentially to 100%. Let's lock in. I'm going to side with Mark on both teams to score. Just gives that element of risk if Atalanta do come with a really good game and maybe see a 1-1, 2-1, 2-2 sort of score line. Thought the guys really analysed the first final well. They're going to have their work cut out here for the second one, I think, the FA Cup final. Let's take a look at the betting that we have on the Match for Betting Exchange. The Manchester Derby and FA Cup final should be huge, but look, we'll see with the prices here. We have Man City at 135 in the 90-minute market, United 9.6. Draw is 4.0. Both teams to score, yes, is 1.8. The Asian handicap line, United are getting a 1.5 head start. The goal line 3.5, but undershading it at 175. Adrian, this will sum it well. We do like a Chris Kindle with me and a few of the lads, and I bought a United fan. I didn't know what to get them at Christmas. I'd usually buy them a Premier League bet, but I get them to win the FA Cup at 9-1, 10.0. I think currently they're 6.0 and they're in the final, which sort of says it all about this Manchester United team. So he's just about got the value. But can you give him any sort of chance that he might be cashing that docket come 5 o'clock?
I can't. I know football's football and we love it because anything can happen. It can, can't it? Someone could get sent off early in the game. You know, things can go against a certain team, but it's going to need a catalogue of things to go wrong, I think, for Manchester City for them not to win this FA Cup final. United, they're a rank bad team, aren't they? There's the worst ever Premier League finish for them, and they're lucky to finish 8th. In my opinion, they're very, very lucky to beat Brighton. I think on the last day, it looks good on paper, 2-0 away, as did the Newcastle win 3-2. But on closer inspection, both those teams carved out stacks of good chances. Brighton were really wasteful, so were Newcastle, and they won the game. So City will be more ruthless. You can guarantee that. They're unbeaten in 35 matches in all competitions. They've won. So basically, my pick here would be for City to overcome a -1.5 goal handicap. So basically, they'll win the cup final by 2 or more goals. It's something they've done in each of their last six matches. They've beaten Manchester United by 2 or more in both league games this season, and in 5 of their last 7 meetings overall. So it's something that they're used to doing. Obviously, cup finals are often a bit of a leveler, aren't they? And we haven't had very many one-sided finals. I was looking at it. It's remarkable. I was thinking, how often does this happen in the last 20 years? It's happened 3 times in 20 years. It's nuts, really. Man United beat Millwall 3-0, 20 years ago. We had the Arsenal Villa 4-0. And we had the City Watford 6-0. The other finals have been, close affairs. So it is going against the grain, but my eyes tell me that City are going to absolutely destroy Manchester United here. Foden and Haaland are 2 players that have extraordinary records against Manchester United. So you would fancy them to run amok really at times, particularly Foden, who's in great nick at the moment. They keep scoring early, don't they, City? Which has given them the chance, the platform to go and score goals. And look, I talked earlier about United giving up loads of chances and maybe getting away with it. Well, they've still conceded 25 goals in their last 12 games. And none of those 12 games were against Manchester City, were they? So I think they're conceding at least 3 goals in this cup final. And that ultimately City cruise to victory. So yeah, that's my pick. If you agree with me, it's only just shy of even money. So for a team that's red hot favourites or white hot favourites here, you can get 1.96 on them to overcome a -1.5 goal handicap.
Yeah, 192 City -1.5. I thought you were wrong when you said 6-0 in the FA Cup. I was like, it was 8-0, but sure, they beat Watford in the Premier League 8-0 the following September, which I think just about says it all. Miguel, take it away. Any hope for Manchester United here?
No. It doesn't feel like it at all, does it?
No.
I mean, yeah, as Adrian said there, even the performances in the last 2 games, well, superficially, they looked better. The results were better. There's still games when they're so open. The one thing you would slightly say that would temper it a little bit is that it feels like since that Arsenal game, which still had typically with United lately an element of calamity to it due to kind of the nature of the goal they conceded, and then surrounded by what happened since. There's maybe a little bit more psychological fortitude to them in the sense that it does feel like the 4-0 at Paris was really when the season bottomed out. And since then, they've been built up a little bit. So I think that maybe points to them potentially giving it more of a go against City. But it's just like, when you really break it down, the gap between the 2 teams just feels far too pronounced at the moment. To my mind, I think it's just impossible not to look, or impossible to look past City having one of those almost controlled wins. It's just what screams out. And in fact, the only potential for that, or being different to that, is that this is actually City's last game of the season. So unlike last season, when they still had the Champions League final to come, so wanted to keep players fresh, which I think did bring more of a controlled performance. There is potentially danger here that actually they open out against Manchester United. We're talking about 6-0s and 8-0. Well, obviously not an 8-0. But they could well trash them if they're in the mood. The Palace game, it's almost a structural thing with United though, as much as mood, and that there are so many gaps in the side to exploit. And City, especially if they're in the mood, given how the season's gone, haven't won the title, trying to make create an element of history again to go with 4 in a row. But the fact they haven't this year got the treble, when we could well have been, and I'm not coming down to penalties against Madrid, we could be talking about a successive treble. It could instead be a successive doubles. But I think out of all that, there will be an element of pride about United. It's potentially Ten Hag's last game as well. That might create a little bit of a buffer resolve against really getting thrashed. But I just think City are too far. And it's City at under 3.5. I think allows a range of scores from kind of 2-0, 3-0, 3-1. Sorry, not 3-1 because that's
2-1.
Yeah, 2-1. It just that facilitate that kind of controlled result.
Okay, Mark, on City, so maybe we have a game to compare to last year. Teams in relatively similar form, although United obviously were doing better last season. But, City's price now is 1.36. This is 90-minute market. Last year, you have them around 1.62. So is that the argument to perhaps maybe side of Manchester United on an Asian handicap line at all? Or
Not really. I think you've got to judge each game on its own merits, really.
I'm trying my best here, lads. As you know what I mean? Trying my best. Go on.
They've fallen off a cliff, really. Back in the start of August, end of July, I was sort of talking about Man United sort of moving forward after what was quite a promising first season under Erik ten Hag. The performances and the underlying metrics may have never really matched the outcome of most of those matches, but there were signs that progress was being made, but it's completely unravelled this year. And I guess if you're looking for crumbs of comfort, really, City, a few of those players seem to be overindulging themselves at the weekend after celebrating the title. They've still got a full week to recover, ready for an FA Cup final. They should be okay. Clearly, City at times can be gettable at the back, particularly by fast breaks, counter-attacks, transitions. We touched on that last week with the West Ham fixture. And I think that's definitely how United will try to hurt them. I think United will look at what Spurs did last week, actually, against Man City and try and replicate a lot of what Spurs did very well, albeit at home. But I think there were signs that City can be put under pressure and can be frustrated at times. I thought Tottenham played very, very well in that particular game, didn't convert their chances as they probably should have. And, we could have had a very different match and end to the season. But, carrying out that plan perfectly against Man City is never easy. Spurs weren't a million miles away, but United have been in the Premier League meetings between the two teams this season, 3-0 and 3-1 defeats. But if you look at the metrics in those combined matches, City racked up 6.5 expected goals, United 1.2. The shot count read 48-10, on target 18-4, in the box 29-8, 27-9 on corners, 111-25 in terms of touches in the box. I think it's fair to say City dominated both. They're obviously now on a 9-game winning streak in the Premier League, scoring at least twice in every match, scoring 3 goals or more on 7 occasions, 4 goals or more in 6 of those 9 wins as well. I guess for United, Lisandro Martinez is back, which is a big boost. Maguire and Lindelof should be fit and available. Varane is as well. So defensively, they will be stronger than a few weeks back. But yeah, as the guy said, don't be fooled by the result of Brighton. Brighton ran rings around them for most of the afternoon with intricate passing and quite impressive movement between the lines, which is what City are very, very good at too. So the only thing I can really say about sort of not getting City on side in terms of battering United is just finals, really. And go back 12 months ago, we talked about the prices. United actually outshot City in the FA Cup final last season, 13-11. In terms of shots in the box, United won it 9-5, despite losing that game 2-1. And FA Cup finals don't tend to be high-scoring affairs. Since 1995, only 4 FA Cup finals have produced 4 goals or more. And actually, if you look at the last 36 domestic matches at Wembley, the average goals per game count is 1.94. 32 of those 36 domestic matches at Wembley have featured under 3.5 goals. So it's not just in terms of the FA Cup final, but all big matches at Wembley tend to be relatively low scoring. So I agree with Miguel. I like that price on 238 for City to win under 3.5 goals. You can be a bit more pragmatic, which I'll come to later in the show, but City to win and under 4.5 goals is trading just below 1.8, which is very, very attractive for me. But I know you and your prices, Dan, and your selection process. So I went with a 238 for the bigger price to cheer on, just City to win 1-0, 2-0, 3-0 or 2-1.
Well, I've gone through the ringer the last minute. I was it was 101. I was going City -1.5 based on what Miguel said about that freshness. No Champions League final. They're just going to go at it. But the stats on the finals, little things like that, I am actually going to side with the bigger price, City. And under 3.5 goals, 238. But Adrian's a good shout out there. No hope for Manchester United, according to the three lads. Let's move on to Championship playoff final. This is obviously the richest game in football. It's been dubbed. The betting I'll get to in a second. I'll get prices. But Adrian, set this game up for us. You've been watching the EFL all season. The Premier League clubs, or the ex-Premier League clubs from last season, have dominated the Championship. Thank God for Ipswich in some respects. So one of these two teams is going to miss out on promotion.
Oh yeah, it's a big old pressure game. It's always a pressure game, but this time around it's huge because both teams need to bounce back to the Premier League at the first time of asking, and one of them won't. So yeah, it's going to be heartbreaking for one set of supporters, that's for sure. It's hard to separate the two sides, I have to say. They've got different strengths. Off the bat, Southampton did the double over Leeds in the league. So that has maybe an impact on the way you might look at this game. They won 3-1 at St Mary's earlier in the season. They won 2-1 at Ellen Road on the final day. So they've got that slight psychological advantage, Southampton. If Leeds bring their game, okay, and they manage to get the three guys behind the main striker into the game, they're formidable. You've got Somerville on the left, who's it was the Championship Player of the Year. Willie Gnonto on the right. You've got Ruter in the middle, and then you've got probably Joel Pirou up front. It is a scary front four, and when they're at it like they were against Norwich in the semi-final, they can rip anyone apart. But there is a but with Norwich, and that with Leeds United, and that but is that if that isn't working, if the front four aren't clicking, or the connection between the front four and the rest of the team isn't right, what have they got? And that has been a constant issue. If you can tame the front four, you can maybe negate Leeds United. So Southampton don't have quite the same level of firepower. They probably have the best finisher on show in Adam Armstrong, really lethal centre forward for them, who might play as a wide forward in this game. But what Southampton have got is a coach in Russell Martin that is actually very, very smart. He will come up with different game plans on a game-by-game basis. He's very intricate in the way that he works out the opposition, finding flaws, finding pockets of space. Without the ball, they'll look like they've got a back three and maybe a front two. And then when they've got the ball, it'll be like a 4-3-3. They're really hard to pin down tactically. You don't know what the starting 11 will be. You don't know what the shape will be. And for me, there's a slightly better coach team than Leeds United. So it's a pick-em, really. You can get the draw, 3.25, which I think is always a great player in the Championship playoff final, because they're notoriously tight affairs. I think this one might be slightly less tight than some because of the attacking players on show. Both teams, but definitely better going forward than they are at the back. But I just think the favouritism, which is Leeds, is maybe unjustified. I would have the two teams level. So for that reason, I'm siding with Southampton on a quarter goal handicap, so plus a quarter at 1.89. So we get the draw. The draw will pay out, as will Southampton win inside 90 minutes. The only way we lose this bet is if Leeds win inside 90 minutes. And I don't think that is by any means a foregone conclusion. I think Southampton tactically are a better team than Leeds, and I give them more than a fighting chance of gaining promotion. So yeah, okay, go with either the draw or Saints on a small handicap is my advice. But Leeds could certainly win the game. They're an excellent team as well.
Okay, yeah, the draw will actually put that in at around 3.4, 3.45. Big price. Southampton plus a quarter of a goal, around 1.9. Mark, you are expecting a more cautious game perhaps than Adrian is, marginally anyway.
Yeah, I think you just got to play the numbers here for me. Okay. Let's not be sort of beat around the bush. The magnitude of this match is off the charts already. Adrian's already outlined that it's the most valuable match in world football. We'll hear that 100 times this weekend, but it is, and that tends to be tends to produce quite cagey, tight affairs with goal mouth action at a bit of a premium in these playoff finals. And the pressure of the occasion can cripple some sides. It can inspire others. We've seen moments of magic win playoff finals, a mistake proved decisive in others. They're rarely high-scoring affairs, and you've got to go out 26 years now for the famous 4-4 draw between Sunderland and Charlton. In the following 25 years, 17 of those playoff finals have gone under. That's 68%. And over half of them have gone under 1.5 goals. That's 13 of 25, including 7 of the most recent 11. So in terms of both teams score betting, just 5 of the last 23 playoff finals have seen both sides score. Now, obviously, the market is well aware of the magnitude of the match and those previous trends for low-scoring matches. But because of the firepower, which Adrian's talked about with Leeds and Southampton, the prices aren't necessarily reflecting that. So I was quite surprised, quite happily and pleasantly surprised to be able to get under 2.5 goals on side at 1.91. To me, that's almost a blind bet, irrespective of the teams, the tactics and the players, considering the magnitude of the game. That's a 68% hit rate for unders over the past 25 years, which implies betting odds around about the 1.47 mark. We're getting 1.91. The market is saying there's just a 52% chance this game ends with fewer than 3 goals. So for me, that's quite a strong play. And, it wasn't that long ago these two teams played out a 0-0 in the first leg of their playoff semi-finals. Both of them did, albeit against Norwich and West Brom, and the opposition were the main protagonists in those kind of goalless draws. But again, it just proves to you that the pressure of the situation can influence the total goal numbers. And if your goal expectancy is relatively low, yes, the draw has to be considered a very strong runner. So it's the biggest price of the 3 90-minute options at 3.5. And again, if you're able to get 0, 1 or 2 goals on side in this game, then you've got 2 of the potential 6 correct scores on your team at 3.5. And if you really wanted to be greedy, just back the draw and under 2.5 goals, or either the 0-0 or the 1-1, and you're getting around about 4.5 to 5.0 on those 2 correct scores, basically, as a kind of Dutching option. So, a few options there, but my main play here will be under 2.5 goals.
Yeah, it's going to set us to be a fascinating game, how both sides approach it, given those goal trends in this match in particular. Miguel, I guess the bigger picture is obviously seeing these teams come down, getting the parachute payments, and because these clubs most of them are going to go up 2 out of 3 anyway, those parachute payments, instead of being brought into the rest of the EFL, is going to the Premier League. It just points to a wider imbalance. That means we're probably going to see this more regularly than not when big clubs come down to the Championship, that they will get back up straight away.
Even look how this has evolved. So I think it was between 2018 and 2022, let me just my season slightly out, but Norwich and Fulham basically exchanged places for 4 consecutive seasons. So we went from the kind of classic yo-yo clubs to this more direct, almost kind of relay between clubs going up. And that this season has evolved into a situation where it was very close to being 3 for 3. And as the lads have said, Ipswich stopped that. The 3 that came up immediately are straight away gone back down, and 2 of the 3 we're guaranteed 2 going up now. It does point to this issue of Premier League 2 that maybe stretches about 6 or 8 clubs into the Championship. And there's even a bit of a theory. I mean, like, this all comes in the context of these wider debates about that this game shouldn't actually mean so much, because there should be more of a gradient in the prize money going down through the league. So there isn't this massive jump between the Championship and the Premier League. And it's even led to this kind of discussion that you could almost have kind of 8, maybe even 6, maybe even 3. Some people go that far in terms of Arsenal, Liverpool, United, but clubs that are interchangeable. 3 to 8 clubs in the Premier League that are fixed, and the rest are kind of almost interchangeable. I know it sounds a bit dramatic, but the way they look, the way some clubs look at the figures, it does come down to this. And if you think about it in those sort of terms as well, like Brighton and Brentford are now established Premier League clubs where they weren't in 2018. It does show how quickly it can change. You only see the amount of former Premier League clubs in the Championship, and this is all kind of being stretched out. And because of all these stakes, I do agree with Mark. Actually, I think it's just going to suppress the game. Even if you look at their most recent encounter, as we got closer to the end of the season, it was just 3 goals in the match. Southampton beating Leeds 2-1. Southampton actually beat them twice this season. And I know it's crude to just extend that to an even more intense game, but I think when you take all that together, it does just feel, I actually agree with Mark on this one. I think under 2.5 feels a fairly safe way to go.
Okay, definitely the safest way, probably under 2.5 goals. I don't know, Adrian, something about your case early on. I think the draw is a big price. And I think given it's the final day of the season, let's lock in 3.45. You're essentially cheering on a 0-0, 1-0, but if the game does escalate, they are two quality teams going forward. Perhaps the 2-2 is on the cards as well. InsideStuffMatchBook.com. Full recap of those three bets. Let's look ahead to the biggest of the 4 games, I guess, the Champions League final. Let's take a look at the betting that we have on matchbook.com. Great having a Dortmund versus Real Madrid fight, an underdog here. Dortmund 5.6, Madrid 164, draw 4.5. Both teams to score, yes, it's 178. The Asian handicap line sees Madrid get a goal head start. 2.5 is the total for this game. Mark, set this game up. Madrid going for another Champions League. It's going to be hard to see another result here, is it?
Yeah, because I've given up trying to oppose Real Madrid in this competition. Yeah, so Man City were the shortest price Champions League final favourites since 1989 last season. But I was surprised. Real Madrid are only slightly bigger than Man City were to beat Inter Milan last season. When is it? 2 weekends away. But I think it's fair enough, all things considered, really. I think it's an enormous overachievement for Dortmund to get this far. Nobody expected it back in August, especially when the groups were drawn. Dortmund housed in the group of death. But I guess the quality of that pool perhaps is questionable now at this stage, considering where Milan, Newcastle and PSG seasons panned out, really. Perhaps we overestimated the standard of that pool, but still great credit for Dortmund to get this far. And Edin Terzic has proved himself capable of setting his side up to be difficult to beat and obdurate enough to frustrate teams and a threat in transitions where necessary. We've talked about the pace that they possess on the counter-attack, the ability to go direct as well, with Füllkrug leading the line. They have experience in defensive areas too. And crucially, they've had a goalkeeper who's overperformed by a decent chunk. Gregory Kobel has been a huge influence, as has the woodwork, as we saw in the last round in the semi-final. Woodwork has been their friend, PSG striking the postal bar 6 times across the 2 semi-final legs. So Dortmund are in the final. But if we're being brutal about it, their run to the final has been relatively kind for a Champions League final. PSV, Atletico Madrid, who finished 4th in La Liga, and then PSG. Whereas Real Madrid have faced Leipzig, a better German side than Dortmund, Man City, and Bayern, and again, another better Bundesliga side. So I think there's a reasonable difference here in terms of quality. That's kind of stating the obvious, really. But Real Madrid haven't always been at the best, but they pulled off the Houdini act enough times now to make them respectable candidates and very fair favourites here. So I actually thought the second leg performance against Bayern in Madrid showed what they're capable of. They left it very late, but they were the better side for the most part. And the individual quality in that team, the superior experience, the mindset of that club, the Ancelotti factor, all favours Real Madrid, I think, coming into this contest. And, having gotten through against Leipzig and Bayern Munich already, there should be no secrets in what they're likely to expect here from Borussia Dortmund. I don't anticipate them running away with things, though. I think it could be a very similar sort of match to what we saw last season with Man City and Inter. And interestingly enough, the last 5 Champions League finals have been settled in 90 minutes by just a 1-0 or 2-0 scoreline. Only 5 of the last 17 have gone over 2.5 goals, and just 2 of the last 54 European Cup finals have produced 5 goals or more. And I just feel that's the way in which Dortmund will set up, actually. It's going to be all about staying in the game as long as possible, being patient, playing on the counter-attack, frustrating, cutting down the space for the likes of Vinicius to exploit. And yeah, I think we'll be in for a relatively low-scoring game again, personally. So with that in mind, I've gone Real Madrid to win and under 4.5 goals, which I see is now 1.95 on the Matchbook Exchange. That stands out to me. Nearly even money for the strong favourites to win 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, 2-1 or 3-1. If you look at the Champions League this season, 9 of Dortmund's 12 matches have gone under 2.5, let alone under 4.5. They'll be under no illusions about the task in hand. So, I'd be surprised if this escalates, but I think Real Madrid clearly are the strongest suit of the 2 teams and should be able to get through over 90.
Okay, yeah, that seems a good way to get Madrid on side. Madrid and under 4.5 goals, now 1.95 on Matchbook. Miguel, get to your bet in a second, but quick word on Toni Kroos. He will retire after the Euros. He's won 3 Bundesliga, 4 La Ligas, 5 Champions League, going for a 6th Champions League. Extraordinary career, also a World Cup in there as well, no less.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's amazing now when you think about it. He's been right through this Real Madrid era, having been at the very start of this Bayern Munich era. There was a period when it almost felt like he and Luka Modric basically almost just imposed the entire tactical ideology of what Real Madrid were. Given beyond that, it almost felt this collection of stars where it was Kroos and Modric that basically just imposed order and control. And they've been an incredible pairing. Kroos is sensational in his own right. And it's almost kind of like one of those, vintage German players from 20 years ago. It's just a kind of a mainstay of these great sides and won everything there was to win. And I mean, within that as well, some spectacular moments. I mean, actually, one of my favorite Kroos moments is one that actually didn't end up that great for Germany, which was that amazing free kick in the 2018 World Cup against Sweden, which was also a real crunch moment, given at that point they did go out eventually, but they could have gone out in that game. And Kroos steps up and scores this amazing curling free kick into the far corner. Really one of the modern greats of the game.
Yeah, he's been fantastic. This game, is he going to land a 6th Champions League himself?
Oh, it's just hard. I don't see beyond it, isn't it? I mean, look, I know it feels churlish and all this and kind of talk about, Dortmund. Ultimately, the reason Dortmund are in the final, they've obviously played well. They've gone through their side, but their side was the more forgiving side. We said it when the draw was made. I think I'd go as far as the 4 best sides in the competition were all on Real Madrid's side, including Real Madrid themselves. You think you'd still probably have City as the best team in Europe, although Madrid at this point are running them pretty close. Although, I mean, I suppose a testament to all this is how Madrid played against Man City. But against everyone else, not least Bayern, who were, of course, the team that Dortmund have had a complex about for over a decade. They were more expansive, Madrid. They asserted themselves more. Again, when it comes all together, I mean, I'll get to my actual score prediction actually in the long shots, which is the game I'm going for. But I think in a game where Madrid are the superior side and are maybe under more onus to take the initiative, they are obviously easier to get at than when they kind of play a kind of a countering game as they do against City. So that means it's within Dortmund to score. But I can just see Madrid gradually picking them off as the game goes on. There's so many, even allowing for kind of Terzic's tactical pragmatism throughout this run. There's still so many points for anyone playing Dortmund to get at. PSG, I mean, really, it's actually amazing that PSG didn't score a lot more goals over that tie. It was blind luck, really. And I mean, if we're talking about luck and kind of the bounce of the ball and the way these things go and how efficient teams can be, exactly the wrong team you want to play in that sort of context is Madrid. Now, who knows? Maybe the way kind of football can sometimes work, all this suddenly for once goes against Madrid and some sort of kind of karmic realignment and, a Dortmund fairy tale, which is what it would be when you kind of take everything in modern football. But I think it says a lot. We're looking to I'm looking to that as regards to potential for any upset. And I'm going, Real Madrid and both teams to score.
3.05, the price of that selection. Adrian, I sense out of all the three of you guys, you're giving Dortmund some sort of a squeak, and you have throughout the Champions League, at least up until maybe the semi-final stage. You really think they can impose their game plan here? Yeah,
I've been pretty impressed with them. Yeah, I mean, I think that their tactical setup has been outstanding under Terzic. I think, they've gone away to various, decent teams in Europe and domestically. Remember, they went to Bayern Munich and won 2-0 not so long ago as well. They've had so many shutouts, so many performances. Yeah, okay, they have ridden their luck. No team has seen the opponent hit the woodwork more often than Dortmund. I think it's happened 12 times in the competition. So, yeah, they've had their element of luck, but I don't think it's all down to good fortune. I think that they're a real team. That's what stood out to me, the way that they work hard for each other, the way they track back, the way they cover their mate. Kerbal, the goalkeeper, has been brilliant as well. I think he's really come to the fore, certainly in my own mind. I didn't know much about him ahead of this season, but I think he's been absolutely outstanding. Look, Real Madrid have had 3 clean sheets in the Champions League this season out of 12 games. Dortmund have had 6 clean sheets from 12 Champions League games. That's half. They've produced some excellent defensive performances, and we all know what finals are like. In terms of they can be tense and cagey. We've been talking about that, throughout today's show. So they've got that teamwork, the togetherness, the collective belief that they can handle any team. And, that to shut out PSG over 2 legs, takes a bit of luck, but takes also a great level of defensive quality, and they showed it. So can they show it again? Maybe. Don't write it off. That's the way I'm looking at it. Real Madrid didn't blow Leipzig away, did they? They were probably second best over the two legs, two low-scoring games. Union Berlin, they scraped past them earlier on in the season. Both one-goal victories. One of them was just a 1-0. And let's face it, Bayern Munich were supposed to be here up until Joselu popped up right at the end of that game. So I don't have Real Madrid as nailed on certainties, even though they always seem to win finals. I think it's 14 or 17 they've won. But I don't see it that way. I think Dortmund can make this competitive. So yeah, I'm going to go with a low-scoring game. It stood out to me. Under 2.5 goals stood out. So obviously we don't have to side with Dortmund here. But I think Dortmund have shown that they can keep good teams at bay. So yeah, under 2.5 goals is a lovely price of 2.2, which I think for a final. I think Mark come out with some stats earlier. On Champions League finals, a lot of them come under 2.5 goals, don't they? And I think Dortmund can make this competitive.
Good case there. 14 out of 17 finals Madrid have won. That is truly extraordinary. And that might be the final nail in the coffin of your selection, Adrian. Unfortunately, we will lean for Real Madrid and under 4.5 goals from Mark. Safer play, booking the trend of this season, 195. But all three decent cases. Bet recap, if you're following the podcast selection, and we'll go for a cheeky finals. Fourfold, we went Madrid and under 4.5 goals at 192. We've gone for the big price selection of the draw in the Championship playoff final in and around 3.45. Manchester City and under 3.5 goals at 238. And both teams are scoring the Europa League final 185. Insights.matchbook.com. Full recap. Let's stick with Madrid Dortmund for these two picks here. Back to you, Adrian. Throw straight back at you. If there is a big price to have for a fun bet in the Champions League, it's the Saturday of the bank holiday. It's an 8 o'clock kickoff. A lot of people will be having a social bet and enjoying the football. Take it away with this price selection. I'm interested.
Yeah, well, look, the boys are very bullish on Real Madrid, but I'm going to go with Dortmund as a long shot. Now you can just have Dortmund. I think at 5.6 as a long shot if you want. But if you think Dortmund can get a 7th clean sheet from 13 Champions League matches this season, then Dortmund to win to nil is 9.0. So you're talking about 1-0 really here, aren't you? Maybe a 2-0, nothing beyond that. But you're banking on Real Madrid having a little bit of an off day, and Dortmund showing that togetherness, that collective resolve that's got them here in the first place. And I think backed by what's going to be an incredible traveling support inside Wembley Stadium. You can picture it now with all those yellow scarves up around the ground. I think it's going to be quite inspirational for the players. And Terzic has proved himself as a decent tactician, a more than decent tactician. The goalkeeper is excellent, and they have the tools. Certainly have the speed on the counter-attack and the ability to go direct when you're absorbing pressure as they inevitably will. They're better equipped than most to go bang and go and hurt the opposition. So look, I don't write off a Dortmund 1-0 win here. Or a Dortmund grind. So yeah, that's what I'm going with. So take your pick. Dortmund on the nose, 5.6, or if you think they'll win to nil, 9.0.
Okay, yeah, it would be incorrect of me not to mention the long shot records between the three guys. 8 wins out of and 31 defeats throughout the season. But for £20 level stakes, you will be up almost £300, and that includes your 2% commission on the matchup betting exchange, where you're getting best price. Phenomenal stuff from the Champions League team throughout the season. So if you think Adrian's talking nonsense like Miguel does, maybe listen to the case and consider it, your thoughts. Miguel, you do think ultimately he is talking nonsense, though.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
Look, it's not impossible. It's a final. Yeah, I mean, there's actually an argument, I think, that the Champions League needs it. We don't want to be getting into the situation where football, but I suppose this is the direction of travel, really, but where competitions are won by the same teams a lot of the time. So City perpetually winning the Premier League, Paris Saint-Germain, the French League, Bayern Munich even allowing for this season the Bundesliga, Real Madrid, the League, and now the Champions League. I mean, if they get 15, it's like it really renders it's already 14. It's double the next most successful team, Milan, who haven't even won one since 2007, which is incredible from that perspective. So I think the Champions League could do with a Dortmund win for all sorts of reasons. And actually, this is something I've said on the pod before. I think it's relevant, and I've spoken about a lot. But no one with a revenue of less than 460 million euro has won the Champions League since 2013, and that was Bayern Munich. And the only reason it would have been so low then, of course, was basically inflation. But like it's remarkable. It shows the kind of the minimum requirement to compete. And the great irony is actually that Dortmund are I mean, they're one of the 10 clubs to have earned the most out of the Champions League over the last decade, I think it is, just because they've always been in it through the Bundesliga. So it does say a lot that that sort of situation, they're absolutely massive underdogs. But yeah, to cut all that short, I'm going just straight Real Madrid 3, Dortmund 1. It screams out at me, and 14-1. I mean, it's if you look at, I suppose, a bit of a precedent, given some of the players are still there, not least Toni Kroos, we've already praised in this podcast. That was the score they beat Liverpool with in 2018. Liverpool were a better side than Dortmund at that point, I'd say, but maybe similar in terms of getting to a final where they weren't necessarily ready for it. And yeah, it does jump out. I think Dortmund's pride will prevent any sort of kind of beating or anything. That's the way these finals go. But yeah, for me, 3-1.
Okay, 14.0 on the Matchup Betting Exchange, and could be a small bigger come kickoff. Do check out the correct score markets on Matchbook. Mark, I mean, another good story, feel-good story would actually be this. Despite Leverkusen's phenomenal season, to see an upset at the Aviva would be quite something, and you give Atalanta a squeak.
I do, yeah. I mean, other long shots I considered were this game to go to penalties, the draw and under 2.5 goals in the Championship playoff final, both around the sort of 5.5 mark. But yeah, I do think the odds are a little bit skewed in Leverkusen's favour, and this is a long shot, and I don't think it should be as big as 8-1 or 9.0 for Atalanta to win and both teams to score in 90 minutes. Having already outlined my case for why I think Atalanta can at least get on the score sheet, I do think they have the firepower to trouble Leverkusen. If you look at the semi-finals in the Europa League, Roma gave Bayer Leverkusen plenty of problems over 2 legs. I know Bayer Leverkusen deserves to progress, but gave them plenty of headaches, and Atalanta are a much better team than Roma are. So this is a side who've already been hurt by their Coppa Italia defeat just last midweek. It looks like Gianpiero Gasperini might be leaving at the end of the season, and they'll want to sign off the era with a trophy, a piece of silverware, which they haven't done so for quite some time, really. And as I outlined in the match preview, as brilliant as Bayer Leverkusen have been this season, and as amazing as the story has been, they have avoided defeat in 4 of the last 8 games by scoring incredibly late goals, and at times 2 or more very late goals as well. They've actually been a little bit lucky to still be unbeaten at this stage of the season. And I just think with all that pressure on them going into this particular fixture, because it is on them, they'll be well aware that they're considered the favourites of the two teams. Perhaps there's a small chance that variance swings back against them. So I just thought 8-1 was an enormous price for what I think is a side who aren't a million miles away from where Bayer Leverkusen are actually winning the match, including both teams to score, because I do think it could be the most watchable of all the matches we've discussed today.
Okay, yeah, for what it's worth, I think that is quite a big price. But again, Miguel would ultimately disagree with you both. Miguel, I feel it's just you've been to these finals so many times and seen the favourites win. Being actually there has maybe persuaded you that the 2 favourites will ultimately win.
Maybe the atmosphere to it and all that as well. And maybe it's an element of kind of pessimism creeping in, just in the sense of now actually this game doesn't really stand to that, given Leverkusen remain a revelation. But in general, it feels like kind of we've seen less and less surprises in these sort of occasions. And I actually, even emotionally, I have to say, I find this game quite difficult to just say, well, like, I mean, always when you go to these games, there's always some sense of kind of what you think narratively be better situation, or a team you kind of might sympathize with more. And like, obviously the Leverkusen story is amazing, and it would be nice for almost sense of completeness, especially if you're writing about, potentially great figures in football. And it obviously amplifies that if they actually do something, go beyond just one brilliant achievement, but have this element that, like, if it's an unbeaten treble, that really is incredible. But then on the other side, I mean, I was in Bergamo for the Atalanta game against Liverpool. They're a club that have been so admirable for so long, and it would be nice to see a reward. But there just feels that gap right now. in terms of, I suppose, the outlook of the teams. I think actually even being champions can change a team and make them more assertive. And from that, I'm going Leverkusen and over 1.5. I thought that's only low because of course this is a best bet. But because I do think the game will actually be a lot more high scoring than that. But this, I think, allows for Leverkusen to kind of assert their champions' credentials while having a game with enough goals.
236, the price of Leverkusen, over 1.5 goals. Adrian, your best bet is Manchester City minus 1.5 at 196.
Yeah, look, I think it'd be a real surprise if City don't win by 2 clear goals or more. I just look at the two teams. I look at the form. You look at the gulf between the two clubs, and I see a fairly one-sided final. Now I know that Wembley can be a real leveler, and that in the past teams have risen to the occasion. But I just feel here, especially with it being City's last game of the campaign, there's no Champions League final to look forward to. The prospect of becoming the first team to go back-to-back doubles, I just think it's too much for City to resist. And of course, they want to rub their neighbour's nose in it, don't they? It's as simple as that. Last year, it was a much closer final than maybe it could or should have been. This time around, I think they're just going to. I think they're going to wallop them. It is my honest opinion. They've beaten United very comfortably in the league both times this season, both times by 2 or more goals. It's happened in 5 of their last 7 meetings. It's happened in their last 6 matches in all competitions. Man City have won by at least 2 goals. I just don't give United a prayer here. I just think they're going to win comfortably. So Man City, I think, will overcome the minus 1.5 goal handicap.
And under similar lines, Mark, you mentioned this at the top of the show. City under 4.5 goals is a serious lock for you at just around 1.8.
Yeah, it is. It's slightly more pragmatic than what we talked about in the FA Cup final preview. Close to 4 to 5, I think, looks very attractive. It's landed last season in the FA Cup final, both Premier League meetings this season as well. Just 2 of the last 26 FA Cup finals went over 4.5 goals, and only once since 1979 has a team won the FA Cup final in 90 minutes with a match featuring 5 goals or more. And that was when Man City demolished Watford 6-0 in 2019. So as bad as United are, they're not as bad as that Watford side are. And I just think with a few very important faces returning in defensive areas and the blueprint laid out by Tottenham recently about how to potentially stop City from just walking all over you, I think United can be competitive to a certain degree. I expect City to win and score a good few goals, but perhaps this match not to escalate into a 5-goal game or more.
Yeah, Mark making the case for United just to make the case for his under 4.5 goals, I suppose, says it all about Manchester United this season. But my thanks to Mark, Adrian and Miguel, not just this podcast, but throughout the season. It's been a fun one. Insights.matchup.com, full recap of the guys' picks. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe completely for free. The 4 of us will be back very soon for Euro 2024 content. So keep an eye on our social channels across Twitter, Instagram, and beyond. But until then, enjoy all 4 of the finals and the rest of the finals taking place the next couple of weeks. And we look forward to bringing you the Euros in around 3 or 4 weeks' time. Bye-bye.